All right, welcome back to episode 22 of The Network Effect. And as always, as soon as I push record, notifications start pouring in. Apologies. Today, we have an episode that I'm excited to do, primarily because this gentleman and I met at a networking event. So you know what? We're just going to dive straight into it. Mr. John Campbell, wealth of experience both in the trenches and strategic operations of corporations and nonprofits, which is very cool. And we're going to touch on that throughout this episode. This guy's got a heart. People, you know what? I'm going to revert from the script a little bit. John, I think I've told you once before, but I have learned just by watching you interact with people to be a better listener and a more patient individual. And I want to publicly thank you for that. Without further ado, we're just going to bring John in.
Hey, good to see you, sir.
Likewise, buddy. Welcome to Network Effect, man. I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Hey, my pleasure. Always good to join a friend, and I appreciate the kind words that you shared. And I must say, anything that I've ever shared with you, I've gained from you fivefold. So thank you so much, brother.
Well, I do appreciate that. The way you engage in active listening. John and I have been at several networking events together, probably other events that I just don't realize because alcohol was there, most likely. But the way this man will sit and actively listen, the body language, the eye contact, it was like an eye opener for me and encouraged me, I'm competitive, to get better. And one day crush John, but I doubt that will ever happen because he's the master of that. Talk to me about that. Was that a learned skill? Is that just who you are?
You know, it is a learned skill for me because I'm a talker, and I love, any chance I get to talk, and people close to me tell me to shut up. But it was a compound effect. And I have to admit that a lot of that came from my time and experience with Dale Carnegie and the training and the things that were involved in that. You know, one of the best books of all time is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And being able, one of the things they talk about is listening to people because they like to talk. And one of the examples that he uses even in the book says that, he spent the whole evening with this couple, he and his wife, and the guy talked the whole time. He just listened. And he said that later other people told him, they're like, man, I really like that guy. He's the greatest guy to talk to. And it's like, he's like, I didn't say anything the whole time. He just, just listened. And the other part of that has really become, in the business world, there's ulterior motives and let's just admit it, right? Part of our networking, obviously we need to have general interactions. You and I had, a great connection, and we've become friends over the many years now. But there is a business underlying a lot of this networking, right? Because either we're trying to build our personal brand, or we're trying to see if we can, gain contacts, broaden our network. Does it help us with business somewhere down the line? And part of that became business motivation. How can I do this better? And it was like, well, if I want to be better at business, I got to be able to be willing to listen to people at these type of events. So that's, no secret sauce. It was really, there was a motivation behind that.
One other thing I want to attribute to you, I used to be the guy who would, I feel I'm a decent judge of character, and I can sort people, if you will, pretty quickly upon meeting them. And I used to be the guy, and I still do the pocket trick I'm getting ready to share.
Okay.
But I would take a strong lead or someone that was sold themselves and put them in a left breast pocket.
Okay.
People I didn't think were going to go anywhere, I would put them in a right breast pocket. When I got home, the right breast pocket got thrown away. The left breast pocket got put on my desk so I could get them into my CRM, reach out, thank them for their time, and begin to work them. And I hate to say work them, but trying to build a better, stronger relationship.
Right.
Now, the left breast pocket is put on top of the right breast pocket, and I try to build a relationship with those I would have discarded. And
Okay.
I attribute that to you as well,
Mm.
because I'm not always right. And I've built some decent relationships with those right-breasted pocket individuals.
Yeah, we just never know because sometimes, uh, and I mean, you're great at this, Brian. There's that, in the networking effect, there's always a continuation, right? So if I build a relationship with this person, we don't always know the relationships that person has, and as we have a discussion, I mean, man, so many times discussions with you, discussions with some of our other colleagues, and they go, well, hey, I know a guy that knows this. And if we didn't take a chance to build a relationship with some of those people, we're like, maybe I don't need what they have, or they don't add into my immediate sphere of influence. But oftentimes, there's a secondary connection that might come of that.
Absolutely. I want to ask, what strategies have been most effective for you in building and maintaining professional relationships over time?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on it. There is that first interaction. It really does make a big difference, and there's some elements to that. And then let me just jump into the second part, is the consistency. If you are in once and gone, nobody's going to remember you, right? You've got to be able to be kind of in the circle, in the sphere of whatever that group is, whether it's a regional, whether it's an industry specific, whatever that is, you've got to show up. You've got to be there a few times. But the first part is, man, I learned this, and this kind of speaks back to what you were talking about earlier. And it's a principle that everybody wants to talk about themselves, right? I mean, we want to be able to say, hey, I've got the best this or that, I can do this for you. And so if I come in and I meet you, Brian, hey, Brian, I'm John, and I go into my whole thing, the whole time you're going to be thinking about, well, what am I going to say when it's my turn, right? And so I've really tried to learn to let the other person share first, because once they get all of their sharing and things out, they're going to be typically more receptive to hear now what I share when they come back, because that's typically what happens. I do this. So now, John, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, they've already got all that out. So now maybe they're a little bit more open to what I am ready to share or talk about. So I felt like, that's because I always wanted to be the first into the punch. And then when I learned that principle, I go, wow, my connections have been way more effective now that I've done that.
It's funny you say that, because I think you know me well enough. I love to A/B test, and I love to try new things, and I document what I'm trying with whom. So, I have a baseline and can, reflect on those notes and see how things worked out for that strategy. And it's kind of skewed because a strategy won't work on everybody. However, I've been attending these virtual networking events on the Alignable platform. And one day I I don't know, I was feeling a little swirly, I guess. I said, I'm not going to talk about myself. We're going to step into this one-on-one room for 7 minutes, and I'm just going to focus on them and allow them to talk. And if they ask about me, I'm going to redirect back to them. And the interesting thing is, I had 7 one-on-ones that hour.
Okay.
And all 7 of them reached out to me afterwards. I didn't really have the time to get to know you. Can we do another one-on-one outside of Alignable? And I'm like, okay, this was a cool effect. Exactly what you
Right.
just said. And it was an interesting experiment. But you're absolutely right. If we can focus on them and ask questions, there's almost a feeling of they're indebted to us because they felt
Right.
they capitalized, which is very, very cool. Um,
And there's always going to be some people who are will be unkind, narcissistic, and they just want to talk about themselves. You're always in, and that's definitely a right pocket person, right? That's someone that's probably not going to be as a beneficial relationship. But the other people, like you said, that genuinely, they're just, they're in this too because they want to, they want to build their network and they want to grow and learn. And when they realize this, they're like, oh man, let's, Brian, and you're going to get a much more receptive connection from them when you have that follow up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting because you can almost sense the desperation some people have when they're in a networking situation, but they need a sale.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that I look at networking as a proactive drill, if you will, on I'm building my funnel for a future sale.
That's right.
And not every relationship is going to be a sale. And those that aren't, I try to put into a referral vertical so they can refer me people. However,
Right.
that desperation sometimes comes through. I would like you to share a story of a meaningful relationship that you've built and cultivated at a networking event that might have been a little unexpected.
Yeah, thanks for asking. There have been several of those. And they've come sometimes at I'm thinking of one in particular, but sometimes it's at those kind of events or sometimes it's at a show. I look at, when you're presenting at a booth, oftentimes you're there because people that are walking by are potential clients, right? Those are, I mean, that's, you've got, you're almost like a hawker at a circus type of event, right? Where, you're trying to grab as many people as possible. But one of those most meaningful ones came from another vendor. And during some of the downtimes, which often happens at those type of big events, they go into sessions and it gets a little quieter. And I take time to, often go meet some of the other people at other booths and, just chat them up and say, hey, how are things going? And what was interesting is there was this lady from another booth that I could have cared less about the organization at the time, and but this person had just a really bubbly personality, very very likable, and over the course of like 3 days, it was just one of those like, hey, how you doing? And then we ended up, this is the funny thing, connecting at another regional city, um, like an ambassador type event for a chamber of commerce. And this person became like the vice president and became one of the most biggest advocates for me in the work that we were doing and helping to promote and expand that. And that was all just because here's somebody from another booth that I just struck up and was just trying to be friendly, just saying, hey, how's it going? Are you meeting people? And it just became one of those things that, we were able to chat a little bit, a couple of different times during the downtimes there. And this, in the long run, became beneficial because now she knew me when I went to this other chamber event. She was able to be an advocate and help introduce me to other people, which was fantastic.
It's interesting you bring up a booth at a trade show. Couple of reasons. When I first obtained a position as a sales rep, I knew the product. I loved the product. I understood a sales cycle, and our company took us to a show, and it was our job to sign up new dealers. That was the priority in their mind, and I knew no different. So one morning walking to the booth, I always went in early to make sure I knew where things were. Did anything get moved so I could grab product and show it? But I came across another company who had a larger booth, a large presence, and they were actually doing a little sales meeting before the show started.
Okay.
And what they said was, we're not here to close a deal today. We're here to network and cultivate future dealers. and
Okay.
this light bulb went off. And what I started doing for 4 years is I would hit the floor early, sit around the corner from that booth, and hear their motivational pump up, hoorah
Right.
meeting before the show started, because the company I worked for didn't provide such teaching or motivation or inspiration. So I kind of took it from them and brought it to the booth with me. With that having been said, I don't think people look at going to trade shows and working the floor and going booth to booth as networking events. And in reality, in my mind, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And you
Right.
go to these shows and people are sitting back on their cell phone. They're not engageable. They're not, it's like you have to, excuse me, can we talk about your
Mhm.
product? That's just off-putting to me. Can you
Absolutely.
speak on that a bit? Kind of a continuation of what you were saying?
Yeah, it is. And you've got to be, if you're working a booth at one of these, and your job is sales, then you've got to be that outgoing personality, and it can be exhausting, and you just have to know that going into it. It's You get a good night's sleep, you pump that coffee because you're going to be on your feet for a minimum of 8 hours, maybe 12 realistically. Sometimes you're there at 6 setting up and getting everything ready, and maybe it's going till the evening session. I used to always, with the teams recently, it was like, when it's dinner time, we're going to book out. There may be other business here today, but if you burn yourself out early on, you're going to be miserable the last few days, and it's going to show, and it's going to impact your ability to connect with people the next couple of days. So those are just some of the groundwork. But you've got to be willing to engage people, and you've got to do it in a nice way. I always try to do it in a non-confrontational way, because what happens, here's the reality, because here's the most of us is, when you think about it, you put yourself in the terms, what are you looking for when you go, right? You're looking for that shiny object, or is there this one thing, maybe you saw a product demo and you wanted to go see it. But a lot of times people are walking up and down, zigzagging down the aisle of the showroom, and oftentimes people will say, well, I'm just going to say no to everything. And you've got to be willing, one, for people to just kind of shine you on. And then I found out the other way is I step outside of the booth and I stand in the middle of the aisle and I just talk to people as they come by. Hey, how you doing? How's your day going? And a lot of times it's off-putting because they're in that I'm going to say no mindset, even at a trade show, right? Because we're all kind of, people are there for different things. Maybe you're there because they got a free trip to, Kalamazoo, Michigan for this conference or whatever it is, and uh, but they get a chance to stop and go, oh wow, this isn't what I was expecting, and you put it in a different, hey, what are you learning? What are some of the things that have been exciting? And when you engage them, now their defenses come down and they start engaging with you, and then oftentimes they'll kind of look behind you and go, well, tell me, what are you here for? And then there's your open door to at least start a conversation. And you always got to keep it at a high level, because like you said, you're almost not closing a deal that day. What you're hoping to do is gain an opportunity to share whatever your product or service is with somebody, and hope to have a follow-up. And you want to collect as much information as you can to be able to have that secondary conversation with them afterwards.
Absolutely. Switching gears here
Yeah.
a bit. You're a pretty pious man, religious, and you've worked with a lot of nonprofits and volunteer organizations. I did an episode on how volunteering with an organization automatically tears down some fences and
Right.
demonstrates a unique interest and how they're great for professional networking.
Yeah.
Can you share your experience with that and any great relationships you've been able to keep to this day because of these types of activities?
Yeah, and you really really touched on that strong point there, because when you're in the trenches, so to speak, we use military terms, but when you're doing service work with people, oftentimes it doesn't matter where they're from, right? And sometimes the greatest opportunities, because everybody wants to feel like their life means something, and a lot of people want a chance to give back. Most of us, especially in the United States, live with a certain amount of abundance, even if things are, if we're working on making our bills every month. We typically all have TV. We've all got cell phones. Most of us have plenty of food to eat, those kind of things. And so we're looking for ways to give back. So it does a couple of things. One is it gives you a chance to be cause worthy too. So when you're in some of these things and you talk to people, you can oftentimes say, hey, but let me tell you about this other thing I'm involved in that's really got me fired up. And you can share about, your experience helping deliver backpacks to kids that are, maybe need some help at school, and talk about the value that is. And it changes the discussion now, and it puts you, the person sharing, in a different category, a different lane in the mind of the person you're talking to. And it says, wow, hey, this guy Brian, he's more than just the sales guy or the network guy or whatever. Man, this guy's actually doing something that's pretty cool, and he invited me to come hand out backpacks to kids. Who doesn't want to give backpacks to kids? You've got to be pretty cold-hearted to not want to go provide something to kids that have particular need, whatever it is. And so it gives you a chance to, like you said, tear down some of those walls. And when you engage with people in what we might call more day-to-day type activities versus a business transactional type activity, you build that connection. And now you've done a couple of things. Like you said, you've teared down the wall, you've got some connection. You're also now more memorable in that person's life. And you're not just a guy, you're the guy in the black shirt and the sport coat and the red tie that I met at an event. You're this guy that's actually out trying to do something. And now you've cemented yourself in that person's brain for later conversations. And for me, I've had that happen, and it was in one particular event. It actually was in the same organization, but we went to volunteer at a food service place locally here in Orange County, where I'm at. And I got to interact with one of our senior executives at the organization, who just on the normal day-to-day basis, it's kind of one of those, hey, how you doing kind of things pass in the hallway. But now here we are for 4 or 5 hours standing in line, packing food baskets together, and just to chat and build that conversation. And that made a huge difference for me, because now he and I had a chance to interact. He knew who I was on a more personal level, and we got to have some engaging follow-up conversations beyond that. And even post working at the same organization, we've been able to have that conversation. And that only happened because we were volunteering together.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. That's hopefully that helps reinforce my beliefs when it comes to volunteering and religious organizations, fraternal organizations, any charitable organization.
There's always there's so many out there that and you can do to the extent that you want. It doesn't, sometimes it's your people who are championing things in their community all the time, but there's also some things where you can go give an hour a week and be involved in it that way.
Absolutely. I referenced earlier that I use a CRM, and new contacts are put into my CRM so I can track interactions and how the relationship is progressing. Do you have a system? Do you use any tools? What's your best advice you could give maybe a new networker as to maintaining these relationships?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. One is if you're on your own and your organization doesn't provide one, then there are some free ones out there that you can use, or low cost, couple of dollars a month. Most of them, I think you can subscribe as an individual, and you can do that, within like the less than $20 a month kind of thing. And it's just a Google search. And essentially what it is it's a database, right? It's a database management. If you're at a place that you're early in that, use Google Sheets and, start collecting the information. And it's can be really tedious. And I think the biggest thing for people is just like exercise and diet and all those things. You've got to just do the little steps every day, because it's tedious to take that business card and to punch it in and to take all that data. Hey, nowadays, some of these ones, all you got to do is take a picture on your phone and you can upload it and it'll parse all that data for you. So it's become easier and easier to do that. And one of the biggest tools for me it's two phases. It's the reminder notifications. As I put a note in, I can have it, most of them say, hey, make sure that, alert me of the ones I haven't talked to in 6 weeks or whatever that is. And so you gain a chance to have those. And sometimes there are those people that maybe they're lower on the priority of whatever I'm actively doing, but I know that this is a valuable contact, even though we don't have something active right now. I know it's valuable and it's necessary for me to be engaged in that. And then the second part is, and I know you use these things too, it's the communication factor. You can schedule you can even pre-write email messages, and you can make them go use the AI. You're the master of the AI tools, brother, and you can craft have it help you craft some really good communicative information, and they can even be semi-generic, and have it say, hey, every so often, either hit everybody in my database here, maybe I need to write a new one, right? Hey, it's March, here's kind of an update, or it's those we call them, like, when you're in the business world and you got a lead, we call them like the welcome series, right? So hey, here, it was great to meet you at this meeting or whatever, and then you have it scheduled so that in 2 weeks it's going to hit that person again with another follow-up message. And then you space it out. You don't want to spam them, right? So maybe it's a week, it's 2 weeks, and then it's 3 weeks, and then it's a month out, or then now you add maybe it's 8-9 weeks out. You have kind of a follow-up. But those are those are some of the most effective tools, because it takes that regular grind and it automates some of that for you.
Yeah, and I want to take this moment to remind people it doesn't always have to be an email.
Right.
The key factor is a touch point.
Yes.
And I mean, a lot of times somebody will pop in my CRM. I need to reach out to them today. I'll go to their LinkedIn profile and see if they've posted something recently. If they have, I'll comment on it, or send them a DM in LinkedIn, or I'll pick up the phone. So many people forget that these awesome devices can also make outbound calls. 9 times out of 10, you're going to leave a voicemail, and that's okay, because it's still a touch point.
Right.
And you're going to be memorable in their mind.
And what's so valuable? It's hard for me, and I have to force myself. That's the only way I do it. You can script those out and get to a point, and you leave me some messages, and you do that. One of the things I appreciate, if I'm sending you text or email, and you'll be like, hey, brother, rather than just responding by email, I just thought I'd give you a call. And that makes a huge difference to people. And even like you said, it's a voicemail. And if you say, hey, I was just checking on you, how are you doing? How are things going in your work and world? Hope your family's doing good. Talk to you later. And you ask nothing. Man, that can be extremely, extremely valuable.
Exactly. And I send a few of those out a day. Just touching base. It's been a while. How have you been? I understand you just experienced whatever. How are you doing? And they are powerful. They really are. Winding down here, what advice would you give to somebody that knows they need to network or is just getting started in networking?
Oh, that's a big, broad question. The first one is, you know what? It's helpful, especially if you haven't done a lot, or maybe you're not the most outgoing person. Is find a friend, find someone, connect with someone, and say, hey, would you go to this with me? Because then you don't have to feel like you're on an island. And a lot of times people get anxiety when they're by themselves. And if I don't have somebody to talk to, am I the outcast? Am I whoever? And if you have someone with you, a lot of times that can remove some level of anxiety. Whether it's a coworker who's also in sales, or just even a, a friend who's local or connected in something. Oftentimes you and I will share events with each other, like, hey, I'm going to go to this. Are you going to go? Are you going to be there? We've got other, networking connections that we've had in other events. And you can just check with people, hey, are you going? Are you heading over to this thing? And just having someone, a lot of times that can take some of the anxiety down. But just remember, don't spend all your time with that person. Your job is to go meet and connect with other people, but they can also help you do that. You can encourage each other and help with conversations and so forth.
I usually read the episode's quote after I've excused the guest. However, I think we can talk about this quote a little bit. It's by Ronald Burt, and the quote reads, "Instead of better glasses, your network gives you better eyes." And I digested that and took that as more eyes, and that those referral relationships. How would you? I'll read it again. Instead of better glasses, your network gives you better eyes.
That is the one I had to think about a little bit. I like what you said, that it gives you more eyes, because now you've multiplied your effect, right? Your connection. If I have done a good job in building relationships with people, that when they're out and about in their world and something comes up that might be related to something I do, my name might pop up in there and go, hey, it would be great for you to meet this person. And that may be somebody I would have never, ever met before. And now you've got an extension, so to speak, of your own sales, tools.
Absolutely. Those referral relationships can be powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, John, first off, if you'd like to connect with John, a link to his LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes. I will also include a link to How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you've not read the book, highly encourage it. It's one I read every couple of years. In addition to that, John spoke about a free CRM. I actually have the first 20 episodes of Network Effect in a Notion template. Notion is a freemium product. You can download this template, hear the first 20 episodes, but there's also a basic CRM and an events calendar in it, to where you can tie, I met Bill at this event. And that is all for free as well. I'll link to that as well. John, any parting words before we part ways?
Yeah, thank you. And I feel like it's one of those things that you oftentimes have heard people say, one-liners and whatnot. But one of the things that I really found, that if you want friends, you have to show yourself friendly. And that is so important in networking. Just be friendly and be welcoming to people, and that can make all the difference.
Absolutely. John, I want to thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up for episode 22. I hope you enjoyed this. Please share this podcast with anybody in your circle of influence that may want to improve upon their networking game, or maybe get a refresher. We love those referrals. And if you like what you're hearing, head on over to whatever platform you're listening or watching on. Give us a 5-star review. A couple of sentences as a review always goes a long way. We'd greatly appreciate it. We will see you next week. Everybody need a refresh. Go. Yeah.